I am joined by Sean Lynch, Vice President of Revenue Management with Graduate Hotels, coming to us from Las Vegas, Nevada. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. How's it been for you throughout the pandemic?
Tumultuous and busy. I think we're definitely seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So, the busyness and the craziness that my team and I are experiencing it's a positive thing. However, we just actually annualized the date that we closed all of our hotels last year on March 20th. And they were closed anywhere from 3 to 5 months. And during that time, you would think, business would be a little bit subside, but it was crazy busy. You have a reduced staff, and we've since reopened and rebounded stronger than ever.
So tell us a little bit about Graduate. Where are those hotels? What do they look like?
Yeah, so we have 30 plus hotels across the United States. They're well crafted and curated collection of hotels in really dynamic university markets. They have different varying amenities, food and beverage, rooftop bars, as well as some of our locations have Topgolf swing suites. So those are a nice little addition for small group gatherings while on site. But then we also have varying size of meeting space, including in Eugene, Oregon, where we have a large city center right behind our hotel.
So you mentioned your team. I would imagine there were some changes over the past 12 months or so. Tell us about those.
Yeah, we had to go through really a tough decision of reducing staff once we were closing the hotels, not really understanding when our hotels were going to reopen. So we ended up keeping a very core small team on for the revenue management team, where they pretty much focused on standardization, unfortunately canceling thousands of reservations that were still on the books, but also kind of being the lifeblood of revenue. And, it was such a unique moment for us to be able to actually reorganize our team, knowing we were going to have to do more with less upon reopening. So we actually restructured our department into having regional revenue managers as well as the area revenue managers and then the revenue managers themselves. So we were able to create depth with less really headcount, and have more insight looking at our hotels. And to this day, it's actually what's really helping our brand stay on top of this escalating demand that we're starting to see. And I think going throughout the closures and reopenings, I would be remiss to not say that the property staff, as well, obviously being impacted. GMs, I think we owe everything to. They've wore many hats during this time, as well as a lot of the operational folks. But we're building back stronger. We're rebounding. We're adding, personnel back in the key positions at the property level as well as the corporate level. And yeah, excited for what the rest of 2021 has to say. It's a little bit of uncharted waters, and I think that's what makes revenue management unique.
So talk to us about whether or not you've had kind of role creep. Are you and your team still maintained in that revenue, or has it spilled more over into marketing or sales, or in that maybe there's more collaboration? Talk to us about that.
100%. So as far as scope of responsibilities, really it's the collaboration with my team, with sales, with marketing, distribution, e-commerce, all of the key facets of our business, especially with revenue generation. And, we were able to really keep our revenue management team highly focused on looking at those triggers of demand, making sure that they're, taking every single opportunity, but also working very closely with our sales teams to understand what's the group landscape look like. 2020, it was pretty grim. We are starting to get quite a few university sports leads in Q1 going into Q2. However, as we start to look further out, we're seeing more social leads and even some corporate and association leads going into 22 and 23. So the collaboration between revenue and sales has been extremely key throughout, doing more with less, right? So you have to start looking at these as partnerships instead of being silos and departments. You're all one large team trying to make the best possible decisions for the hotels. And that also includes marketing, working with understanding our email cadence, making sure that we're hitting the consumers at the right time when they're ready to transact, but then understanding appropriate distribution, making sure everything's lined up. We have all of our channels wide open. And then obviously that ever important, and I think this is anywhere you get in the hotel industry, is trying to continue to drive those direct bookings onto our website, thebrand.com. And so that's where e-commerce comes in very greatly. And, the collaborative effort with revenue and all of these, other disciplines has been extremely crucial.
You're talking about the triggers. What about forecasting? How are you forecasting? Tell
I would
us.
say, lick the finger and see what sticks, right? So, it has been definitely difficult. Just to give you a quick, I think, landscape of even what my team has had to experience, and then when I'm looking at the entire collection, as we were reopening our hotels at the end of, really most of them by the end of summer last year, but some of them into late Q3, some of these markets, especially the West Coast, the restrictions in place, demand just wasn't there, right? And then you had certain areas in the South where, demand had stayed pretty steady. Overall, yeah, it's been down if you look at a year like 2019, but compared to the rest of the country, our Southern properties were actually trending very well. So you start getting this false sense of security for those Southern properties, but yet you kind of wear those dismal glasses when you're looking at the West Coast, and then you kind of keep those blinders on. Well, what happens is we were expecting the worst by the time we got to September and October. You hear about the second wave coming on, more restrictions, and it didn't happen, right? So we were like, okay, it's a little bit more optimistic. I think things are going to go well. Well, all it was delayed by a month or two. That second wave really started to hit about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and that's when a lot of our markets started having reintroductions of restrictions coming back into play. And that basically stalled demand going into early Q1 of this year. But I'm happy to say that over about the last 6 to 8 weeks, we've really started to notice strong last minute demand for our weekends. We're starting to get a little bit more further out into Q2 on the transient side, not much. But once again, those group leads starting to come in. So how does that play into the forecast? Well, and not only can you not rely on historical, but you can't even understand what your short term is like. So, as my team starts to navigate and they're looking at certain triggers and they're trying to understand exactly what they should look at to look into that crystal ball to plan that next 30, 60, 90, and eventually a full year forecast, some of the mainstays that we've really, really tried to hold tried and true is breaking down into that market segmentation, understanding that each market segment's acting a little bit differently. They had historically, but, certain things like corporate L&R, business, still very, non-existent to this point. But we've also had some last minute rebounds that we're starting to see, like an advanced purchase. So there's more of that willingness to, go that 14-day cancellation, non-refundable rates, and people are looking further out. But understanding that last minute transient business, a lot of it's retail, a lot of it's OTA, but we're getting that volume. And so it's starting to take those current trends and extrapolate it over that 30, 60, 90 that they're leveraging. And then, at the end of the day, I think our biggest opportunity is understanding what we can do with ADR. So with our rates, you go one full year without really being able to push rate. You didn't have the demand nor the occupancy to justify it. And now you're getting into some scenarios where you're able to. So, I think that's one of our biggest lessons to still learn is when we're forecasting our ADR potential, it's still not quite there. The team's great at still being able to push rate and optimize or discount depths, but it's now translating that into a forecast.
Got about 30 seconds. Any advice for the hoteliers as we continue through this?
Stay optimistic. That's all you can do. Stay relevant, stay optimistic. Understanding you have to be semi-risk adverse, but at the same time, take some risks. Now's the time. You have so much potential that you can work on, and I think the sky is the limit for us.
Some good advice, Sean. Well, thank you for joining me, sir.
Thank you very much.
You bet.